In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at the benefits of using toolpath templates. A toolpath template is a single or multiple selection of different toolpaths which have been saved and then can be imported to apply to future designs. The key here is the way you organise your vectors and toolpaths. So we will demonstrate this process now. So let's start by opening a fresh copy of the software. For this tutorial, we're going to open an existing file. Just navigate to the projects folder and select the vectorphone_drawing and then press open. Now some of you may recognise our Vectorphone nameplate. This has been demonstrated in a previous tutorial. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to take these vectors and we're going to organise the vectors onto different layers and then also toolpath them so that we can look with our finished nameplate. And then what we're going to do is we're going to save our toolpaths that we've created into a toolpath template. Then we're going to load up some other designs of nameplates and then apply that toolpath template to those just to demonstrate how the whole system works. So the first thing that we're going to concentrate on is organising our vectors onto different layers according to what type of toolpath they may be. So for those of you that have watched the previous tutorial with the Vectorphone nameplate, you'll know that we used a pocket toolpath to pocket out all the material in between this vector and our text, leaving our text raised above the rest of the material. So what we're going to do is we're going to move certain layers that are going to be toolpathed in a certain way onto their own layer, so that when we come to actually do the toolpaths, we can select the vectors in a certain way on the toolpath form to only select vectors on a certain layer. So we'll start off with the pocketing toolpath, as we have already mentioned that. So with this highlighted, just hold the shift button down and just drag a box around the whole of the outer text and not including the serial. So just come halfway into the serial text just so that everything that's actually enclosed within this box is only the Vectorphone text, like so. And once we've done that, all we need to do is just right click on any of the highlighted text and just come to move to layer and just move to a new layer. Now I'm just going to call this pocket, and we can leave it visible, and we don't need to make it the current active layer, so we can just press OK with those options. Next we're just going to select all of our circles, so again select one, hold the shift key down and select the rest of the circles. Just right click again once we've done that and move to a new layer. This one I'm just going to call drill holes and just press OK once we've done that. And then we're going to use the serial number, so just highlight that, right click, move to new layer, and for this I'm just going to call this engrave, as we are literally just going to engrave that text onto the final product. So once we've done that, just press OK. And last but not least, we have our outline. Now we've already got all of the other vectors moved onto a different layer, so if you just see, actually layer 1 actually holds the outer vector, so there's no point actually moving that to a new layer. We'll just rename layer 1 to our cutout, like so. So that's our organisation. So we've put all of our vectors that we're going to be toolpathing in a certain way into their own layer, which we've handily named relative to the type of toolpath that we're actually going to be using with them. So I'm just going to put back the visibility on all of our layers and just close the layers box there. And what we're going to do now is we're going to actually create the toolpaths for these. So let's go over to the toolpath tab, and the first toolpath we're going to create is of course our pocket. So let's come to the pocket toolpath and let's just open that form. Now the first thing we're going to do before we specify any options is actually show the advanced toolpath options, as we are going to be needing the vector selection, which isn't actually available on the standard form. So just make sure that we've got this checked, and we can go ahead and start specifying our options. So we're going to be pocketing from the top of the material, so we can leave the start depth as 0, 0, and we're going to be cutting down to 3/64ths of an inch. So if you're like me, you don't actually know what the decimal value representation of that is. What we do is we just simply type 3 divided by 64 and then press equals. And we can then move on to choosing our tool. So I want to use a 16th inch end mill, and the reason I want to use quite a small tool is because I want to actually be able to machine away as much into the material as possible in between the letters of our text. So let's go into the tool database, and I can see actually that I don't actually have a 16th inch end mill. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this one, and I'm going to press copy. And now I've got two 1/8 inch end mills, so I'm just going to choose the top one, as they do seem to go in order. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this one, and I'm just going to type in here the 1/16, as I don't actually know what the actual decimal value is of that yet. So what I'm going to do, in the diameter section, I'm going to specify 1 divided by 16 and press equals, and that will then give me my decimal value of 1/16. So if I wanted to, actually I could just copy that by pressing Ctrl and C on the keyboard, just remove what I've actually typed in there, 1/16, or I could actually keep that in there and just space that, maybe even bracket the actual decimal value, and then check the rest of the options. So the pass depth I may actually just want to keep as the same as the diameter, so just paste that in there as well using Ctrl and V on the keyboard, and then just press enter on that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go down the rest of the options. So I'm not going to use a large area clearance tool. For our pocketing strategy, I'm going to go with a rastering strategy, as I think that would be more efficient for this type of toolpath. So I'm just going to raster angle at 0 degrees, which is going to be from bottom to top, and I'm going to use the option to profile on the last pass as well. And then we just can go down, skip the rest of the options until we get to the vector selection. Now what we do here is the part where we actually join this toolpath to all the vectors on a particular layer that we've already organised. So to do that, simply select the selector button there, and then this is where we get our options to choose what type of vectors we're going to select and on what type of layers. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to select closed and open vectors, and I'm going to select to only select the vectors on, and I'm not going to choose all visible layers. I'm going to select an individual layer, and then I'm going to choose to select the vectors that are open and closed on the pocket layer. As you'll see, as soon as I've ticked that checkbox there, you'll see that in the background it's actually selected the exact vectors that I wanted. So we can rest assured that that's going to be okay. Now all we need to do now to make sure that our toolpath template is okay is to check this button down here which says associate these rules with this toolpath. So basically, if I go to use this toolpath again on different vectors, not just the ones that I'd selected, then it will actually look for any vectors which are associated with these rules on this particular layer. So once we've done that, press close. Just give this a name, so I'm just going to leave this as pocket, and I'm just going to press calculate. And we can even preview that as well, like so. So let's close that, and let's go back to the 2D view, and let's pick our next toolpath. So the next toolpath we're going to concentrate on is actually our engraving text just down the bottom here, which is our serial number. And for this we're going to be using a profile toolpath, and we're going to run a VBit tool on the actual vectors to do the engraving for our text. So let's select profile toolpath. Now for this toolpath I want to cut to a tiny depth, so I'll just etch the actual top of the material. So I want to go down to 0.02, and for our tool we want to use a VBit tool. So let's just scroll down to the VBits, and I'm going to use a 60-degree 1/4 inch VBit. So let's select that and then press OK. Obviously if you do end up running any of these toolpaths, just make sure that the speeds and feeds and cutting parameters are relevant to your machine, and then press OK. And because we're actually doing engraving on single line text, we actually want to machine these vectors on the vector, so the actual tool will follow the path of the vector as well. So once we've done that, we can then scroll down towards the bottom, and again we're going to use the vector selection. So just press the selector button, and we're going to use open and close vectors on the layer engrave. So let's just deselect the pocket and let's select the engrave, and now you'll see in the background that now the serial number has been highlighted. Again, make sure that we've got associate with toolpath selected and press close. Just give this a name. So I'm actually just going to call this engrave, and then press calculate, and then preview. You'll notice that nothing has come up on the preview. Now the reason for that, if we actually go back in to the toolpath, so you can either select it and then go to edit the toolpath or just double click on engrave, you'll see that the actual start depth is at 0, 0, the top of our material. Now if we just look down the bottom right here, when I go into this, you'll see that this part of the material is at 0, 0. You'll see that the Z option down here is 0. Now if we just move it over to where we are actually trying to use this toolpath, you'll see that if you remember we did actually do it inside the pocket, which was 3/64 of an inch deep. So all we need to do in this start depth, we just need to type in again 3 divided by 64 equals, and then scroll right down and just press calculate and then re-preview that, and this time you'll see that it has actually been engraved onto the material. So again, let's just press close on the preview, go back to the 2D view, and let's concentrate on our next toolpath. So our next toolpath, we're going to choose to do our drill holes. Now we could use a standard drilling toolpath for this, but what happens if we're using a different tool? So we may need to use a larger tool or a smaller tool depending on the size of the drill hole that we're doing. Now don't forget that drill holes literally do just go down into the material and straight back up again. So if on future designs, for instance, we decide to do larger holes than these ones, which are currently 1/16 inch in diameter, then using a drilling toolpath with a 1/16 inch end mill is only going to drill a hole that's 1/16 inch rather than say a 1/4 inch hole, for instance. So we may actually want to use a pocketing toolpath for this, just so that we can actually then bore out the hole to whatever size that we need using the 1/16 inch end mill. So with that in mind, just deselect all the vectors, come to the pocket toolpath, and we know we're going to be starting on the top of the material, and we know that we want to go the full depth. So we could type in the full depth if we know what it is. If we don't, we could type in Z equals, and that will then display the current depth, or we could also type in just Z on there, and what that will do is that will replace the Z value with whatever the Z depth is in the material setup. So this is future-proofing this toolpath, so that in case we do decide to do a slightly thicker or slightly smaller depth in the future, this toolpath is always going to alter that dependent on what the actual material setup Z depth actually is. So we'll leave that as Z, and we're going to choose our tool. So we're going to use a 1/16 inch ML. Now I can see that's already been selected from the previous time we used our pocket toolpath, so I can just press the edit button just to double check these values, and if I'm happy with that, just press OK. And next we can choose our pocketing strategy. Now for a hole, it's best to use the offset value, where it's just going to go from the inside out. So that's the best way to go about drilling some holes like this. And then we're going to go down and use the vector selector. Now for this, we're going to use only only closed vectors. And if you just look below that, where it says all closed vectors, we can also select to only select circles on a particular layer. So let's just highlight that box, and we can have the option then further to select all circles, circles matching the actual tool diameter, or circles that match a given diameter and tolerance if we want to specify them. But I don't want to specify any value, as my holes could range from 1/16 inch to maybe a 1/4 inch, or maybe even larger if I need to. So I'm just going to use this option to select all circles, and I'm going to select all circles on the layer drill holes. So I'm just going to deselect engrave and select drill holes, and then I'm going to associate these rules with that toolpath. You'll see in the background it has highlighted all of the circles that we've drawn on the drill holes layer. And once we've done that, we'll just press close. We know that we've got the right vectors selected, and I'm just going to give this a name, call this drill holes, and then press calculate, and just preview that just so we know that we've got this toolpath correct. So you can see that that's gone straight through the material as we expected, and we can then close that, and then we can concentrate now on the final toolpath. So let's go to the 2D view, just deselect all those vectors there, and for our cutout path we're actually going to use a profile toolpath, which has probably come as no surprise there. So let's just select that. Now we know we're going to be starting from the top of the material, so just leave that as 0, 0. And the cut depth again, I'm just going to leave that as the letter Z, just in case obviously again if we do decide to change the depth of material. As long as we've got it in the material setup, it will pick it up here in the toolpath as well. So let's move on next and let's select our tool. So let's go into the tool database and select our 16th inch end mill which we created earlier, and then press OK. Now for this we're going to be machining on the outside of our vectors, so just highlight that one there and select that. And we can then go down, and if we want to, we could also add some tabs to this. So let's just select the button to add tabs, select a reasonable length, so I may just want to have a length of 1/4 inch for our tab, and a thickness of say 1/16. So let's just type 1 divided by 16 and then equals in there as well. And all we need to do is just press edit tabs, and you'll see that we'll get an error message. Now this is because we don't actually have any vector selected at the moment. So what we need to do first is actually select our vectors. So if you just press OK on the error message, then go down to the vector selection, and then press the selector button, and then let's select our vectors. So we know that we're going to be selecting closed vectors. We're not going to be just selecting circles, so let's select all the closed vectors on the layer cutout. So let's select that and deselect the drill holes. Let's come down to the bottom again and associate all these rules with this particular toolpath. You'll notice that in the background that our outline vector is actually now selected. Let's press close on this, and we can now go ahead and create some tabs. So let's press the edit tabs button. You'll notice that we're now allowed access to this form. So we can go ahead, and if we wanted to, go ahead and just manually place some tabs to this, or we can actually just delete all the tabs and allow the software to position some tabs for us. So I may want to just have a round number or a constant number of 4, and all we need to do then is just press to add tabs. Now with this option selected, first tab at the machining start point, which is where it is down here, we can just delete all of them, and we can deselect that and then add tabs again, and then you'll see that now it's not restricted to the machining start point, which was down the bottom left here. So I'm just going to leave them like that. Now one thing that we do need to take note of here is that any tabs that are going to be in a toolpath, which is then going to be used for a toolpath template, when recalculating the toolpaths, once we've actually imported the toolpath template, the tabs will not get added to the vectors automatically. You'll need to manually come into the whatever toolpath it may be. So if it's this one, for instance, our profile cutout, we'll need to go into that toolpath. We'll need to go into this part of the form, and then we'll need to just press the add tabs button. Now the rest of the information will be saved, but we need to actually manually press the add tabs button. Now the reason why it's not automatically done for you is because the software will put these tabs at any position. There's no real way of knowing where the actual tab may be. So it may even have put this tab in the corner. Now we might want that there. So just to make sure that we actually do double check where these tabs are, it will ask us to first press this add tabs button, so that we can then go ahead and, if we need to, rearrange where our tabs are going to be. So once we're happy with all of this, all we need to do then is just press close, and then we can scroll down, give this a name. So I'm just going to call this cutout, and then I'm going to press calculate, and I'm going to preview our final toolpath, and you'll see we do have our final piece. Now we could actually even give this some colour, so we can actually define our regions better. So let's just go ahead and give the pocket a colour. So toolpath colour, I'm going to give that maybe that shade of blue, and I'm going to do that also for our engrave. So let's just select that, and I'm just going to leave it like that because that looks fine. At least it helps us to identify the regions that we've actually cut out better than all being the one colour. So now we've done that, all we need to do is press close on the preview toolpath form, and to create our toolpath template, which is this button here, it says we need to save all visible toolpaths as a template. So if we actually click this at the moment, you see that we get no reaction, as from the actual tooltip there, it's stating that we need to have visible toolpaths. So all we need to do, if we want to actually use all of them, we just select this button here, and it will then highlight all of the checkboxes for our toolpaths in our toolpath list. Or if we were going to do it for just specific toolpaths, obviously we could just deselect the ones that we don't need, or vice versa. So as I want to actually create a toolpath template with all the toolpaths in it, I'm just going to select them all, and I'm going to come to the Save All Visible Toolpaths, and I'm just going to give this a name. So I'm just going to call this Vectorphone Nameplate dot toolpath template. So and then I'm going to save that in my projects folder. And now that's saved, we've now got a toolpath template we can use on future designs. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. So first of all, I'm just going to File and then Save As. So as I've added toolpaths to this, I'm just going to remove our drawing section there and just replace that with toolpath. Press the Save button, and I'm going to go ahead and File and close that. I'm going to go ahead and open an existing file, and I'm going to open from the projects folder the nameplate designs and press Open. Now this is a few other designs, including the Vectorphone design, of different nameplates. And what we're going to do is first of all we're going to ensure that the layers or the vectors have been suitably organised in the same method as we did previously for our toolpath template, and then we're going to go ahead and actually import our toolpath template and then recalculate the toolpaths. So firstly, let's go to the Layers tab down the bottom here. And all we're going to do is we're going to check out all the vectors and see if they match up to the type of layer that they're on. So the cutout, so we're expecting the outermost vectors of these nameplates. So let's just turn the visibility off for those. So you can see that all the outer vectors have disappeared. So let's just turn those back on. The pocket, so I'm expecting the inner border and the text in the center to disappear. So let's just turn those on and off. Like so, you can see that. Now we do have a few etches here. Now what layer are those on? So let's just turn the pocket layer back on. And let's go to the Engrave Toolpath. Let's just turn off the visibility on that. And you can see that those etches that have been made there are actually a part of the Engraving Toolpath. So let's just turn the visibility back on that. And then let's just turn off the drill holes. So you can see from just doing a quick check over that all of our layers seem to be organised so that it would be okay for when we import our toolpath template. So let's go back to the drawing tab and let's go over to the toolpaths tab. Now all we need to do here is go to this icon to load a toolpath template, select that, navigate to the folder which we saved our toolpath template in, select it and press Open. You'll notice that now in our toolpath list we've actually got all the toolpaths that we actually saved in the previous file for our toolpath template. And all we should have to do now is simply recalculate all the toolpaths. As you'll see at the moment, if we try to preview all the toolpaths, you'll see that they are not actually relating to any vectors. So that's why we need to recalculate them. And that's the reason why when we actually created our toolpath in the first place, we actually attached this vector selection to automatically select any vectors abiding by those rules that we set, so that when we do come to recalculate these on different vectors, it will pick those up. So let's go ahead and recalculate our toolpaths. You'll see that we've now got a message letting us know that all the toolpaths were recalculated successfully. Now, not necessarily all the time are you going to get that message. Now that may be because on one of or all of your designs, for instance, we may not actually have, let's say, the serial number on any of our designs. And all it's going to come up is saying that we haven't been able to find any vectors suitable for this particular imported toolpath. So all it will do is it will check on all the rest of the toolpath and just leave this one blank, letting you know that there's actually no vectors associated with that particular toolpath. So all we need to do now is go ahead and just preview all the toolpaths just to make sure that we've got the look that we wanted. So let's go ahead, and you'll see that it's turned out exactly the way we want it. Now the only thing that we haven't got is tabs on the other vectors other than the one that already had them on in the first place. So all we need to do for that is go back into our cutout path, and you'll see that it's actually got all the information there ready. All we actually need to do is just simply select to add tabs, and it will then add tabs with all the details that we actually selected previously, and to press close, scroll down, calculate, and then reset the preview, and then preview them all again. Obviously, we may like to have actually checked our tabs beforehand, as you'll notice that tabs on the corners can be a bit tricky to get out, but that's the reason why in the first place we don't actually automatically apply the tabs rules to all the vectors. And what we can do now is we can go to File, we can save our work, so that if we need to, we can come back to this at any point. Just going to take the drawing off again, just add toolpath to the end of this, and then press save. And that now brings us an end to this tutorial. I hope that you have learned something that you can apply to your day-to-day work with CNC, and thank you for watching.